Alright, let's get right into this explainer and unpack the polarizing, monumental, and honestly, ultimately tragic story of Nirmal Purja, better known to the world as Nims. We're looking at a man who fundamentally shattered human limits, but at the exact same time battled systemic corruption and some incredibly severe personal controversies. You see, this isn't just another story about climbing mountains. It's a really deep dive into the complex intersection of extreme ambition, entrenched syndicates, and the absolutely unforgiving forces of nature.
Now this model right here, giving up is not in the blood, it perfectly encapsulates his entire existence. Here's a guy who conquered the world's most brutal peaks, literally defying what scientists and veteran climbers thought was physically possible. And yet, he also found himself right in the crosshairs of extreme controversies and fierce industry pushback. To really understand those controversies though, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the man himself.
So part 1, Birth of a Legend, from Magdi to the SBS, let's look at how he got his start.
Because you don't just wake up one day and decide to conquer the Himalayas. That kind of grit is forged over decades. Born in 1983 in a remote village in Magdi, Nepal, he pushed through childhood illnesses just to join the British Gurkhas. But he didn't stop there. In 2009, he became the very first Gurkha to pass the grueling selection for the Special Boat Service. That's an incredibly elite and secretive British military unit. That 16-year military discipline, that laid the indestructible foundation for everything that came next. It wasn't actually until a trek to Everest Base Camp in 2012 that the mountains truly called him, awakening this unquenchable thirst for the peaks.
Fast forward a bit, after leaving that prestigious military career, he launches Project Possible, and the scale of his ambition here is almost unbelievable. The goal was to climb all 14 of the world's 8,000-meter peaks. To put that in perspective, the previous world record was nearly 8 years. Nims mapped out a plan to do it in 7 months. People called it madness, literally impossible. Without initial funding, he took the massive risk of mortgaging his own house for £65,000 just to get it off the ground. And guess what? By October 2019, he absolutely shattered the record, finishing the whole shebang in just 6 months and 6 days.
Following a massively successful Netflix documentary, his fame just exploded. He led the first ever winter ascent of K2, the Savage Mountain, famously singing the Nepali national anthem at the summit. He achieved a staggering record of climbing the 5 highest peaks without oxygen 9 times. He founded Elite Exped, pulling in VIP clients like Elon Musk and David Beckham. But what's really fascinating is that, according to sources, he remained incredibly grounded through all of this. He loved grabbing street food and would famously drop $10 tips at his humble local barbershop in Kathmandu.
Moving on to part 2, Disrupting the Syndicate, the Old Guard versus Elite Exped. As you might guess, immense success in a traditional industry never goes unchallenged. By bringing in these elite tourists and pushing world-class safety standards with Elite Exped, Purja severely threatened the lucrative operations of established companies. And this old guard of the mountain tourism industry, they had some very checkered, highly controversial pasts. We're talking about syndicates accused of claiming insurance money through fake helicopter rescues, and even exploiting climber deaths to extort money from grieving families. To really understand the scale of the corruption he was up against, just look at this data from a company called 7 Summit Treks. Back in the Nepali year 2074, they were granted permission for 12 climbers. Well, investigations later revealed they illegally tacked on 2 extra names to that permit. Since a foreign climber pays an $11,000 royalty, this single manipulation allegedly scammed the government out of 22 grand. And remember, that is just one permit from one company. So, while Nims documentaries and high-end services were busy revitalizing a heavily tarnished Nepali mountain tourism industry, his success was inevitably siphoning clients away from that old guard. It really makes you wonder, right? Did his massive success and unapologetic disruption of this dirty system basically put a giant target on his back? Which brings us to part 3, Shadows and Allegations. Because right as his influence peaked, things got incredibly complicated. A barrage of severe allegations hit him all at once, creating this really complex dichotomy of public triumph and private shadows. Let's look at these specific controversies objectively, strictly through the lens of the investigations and legal records, because the landscape here is incredibly murky. The most severe of these allegations dropped on May 18th in the New York Times. Former Miss Finland Lada Hinsa accused Purja of sexual misconduct, alleging he attempted to force himself on her during a business meeting in a Kathmandu hotel. This was a devastating allegation, and it immediately raised very serious public questions internationally about the safety of female guests climbing with his company. Meanwhile, domestically, he was facing another nightmare. An office rented for his company in Kapan suffered a tragic gas explosion, killing 3 young employees. Now, Purja wasn't even there. He was away on an expedition, but rumors immediately started swirling that he intentionally fled the fire. The landlord even demanded a staggering 6 crore rupees in blackmail, which is about $450,000. Ultimately, the High Court ruled entirely in Purja's favor, pointing out the landlord's faults, and Purja committed to supporting the victims' families. But critics still weaponized the tragic loss of those 3 young lives to heavily criticize him in the media, adding intense domestic pressure. On top of all that, investigative reports highlighted a controversial legal loophole he was utilizing. Even though he was a British citizen holding a British passport, Purja used his non-resident Nepali citizenship when climbing. This allowed him to pay the Nepali Everest royalty fee of 75,000 rupees, rather than the hefty $11,000 fee charged to foreign nationals. While it was completely legal, it sparked a massive debate about ethics and fairness in the climbing industry. And the political friction spilled right into Parliament. Member of Parliament Rajendra Bajgane launched a fierce attack on Purja, even suggesting he be completely banned from Nepal. But when you look at the sources, there is a glaring conflict of interest. Bajgane is actually a rival tourism businessman, and his own hotel was embroiled in illegal foreign investment and black money controversies. Purja claimed that Bajgane's political attacks only started after Purja rejected a business partnership to send his elite clients to Bajgane's highly controversial hotel. This whole feud really peaked when Purja posted a video claiming the safety ropes on Everest had been intentionally cut below the summit for his team. The Mountaineering Association accused him of lying to defame Nepal, but Purja quickly provided proof. He claimed these incidents were direct sabotage by the old syndicate, proving that the Himalayas had become just as politically dangerous as they were physically perilous.
Okay, Part 4, The Final Ascent, July 30, Broad Peak. Amidst all this noise, the politics, and the allegations, Purja returned to the one place that still made sense to him. His objective was Broad Peak in the Karakoram Range. This was to be his 57th ascent of an 8,000-meter peak without oxygen. He had just successfully climbed Gasherbrum 2 and was in pursuit of finishing a massive hat-trick campaign, basically climbing all 14 peaks 3 times over. He was focused, deeply experienced, and cautious. But as we know, the mountains operate entirely on their own terms. The actual GPS tracker data recovered from his Garmin device tells a clear, undeniable story of that morning. Leaving base camp at 4:18 a.m., he pushed straight up to Camp 2. By 6:18 a.m., he began the summit push. The data shows a really strong, steady, and cautious ascent, right up until 9:38 a.m., reaching an altitude of roughly 6,600 meters. Up to this exact moment, everything was completely normal. Then, you see his terrifying number. Between 9:38 a.m. and 10:08 a.m., a window of just 30 minutes, the GPS reported a sudden, violent 724-meter drop. A massive, entirely unexpected avalanche had detached from the mountain above, sweeping Purja and his entire 10-person team violently down the face of Broad Peak. Despite a massive international rescue coordination involving drones and Pakistani military helicopters, the weather and the terrain proved way too hostile. This incident instantly became one of the darkest pages in all of mountaineering history. It claimed the lives of 10 deeply experienced, fearless climbers, 5 Nepali heroes, and 5 international adventurers, just gone in a matter of seconds. Source investigations confirmed that this disaster was absolutely not due to negligence, rushing, or some reckless desire for glory. Purja was well known to turn back instantly if the weather turned south. He always said he just wanted to return home to his young daughter. This was simply an unforeseeable, massive accumulation of new snow. A complete life, brimming with unfulfilled plans to reform Nepali aviation and build high-altitude rescue centers, disappeared into the lap of the Himalayas, tragically burying his ambitions, his controversies, and his life's work in an instant. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we are left to ponder this incredibly complex legacy. Nirmal Purja proved to the world that giving up is not in the blood, breaking the old syndicates and completely redefining human endurance. Yet he leaves behind shadows, unanswered allegations, and bitter rivalries. How will history ultimately judge the monumental, heavily debated, and fiercely determined life of Nims Dai? Was he the savior of the mountains, or a complicated casualty of his own meteoric rise? That is a question that will undoubtedly echo in the Himalayas for generations to come.